Today, we shall answer the questions why businesses should pay attention to indirect procurement. Let's begin. A business will not survive without creating solid relationships with third-party suppliers. As a business grows, so do the responsibilities and transactions that are needed to keep operations going. This can be a complex matter in procurement where internal units forge relationships with outside suppliers in deals that can directly impact the company profits and reputation. In this episode, we will take a look at indirect spend, another side of procurement that many industry professionals often underestimate and take it for granted. So, what is indirect procurement? Indirect procurement pertains to purchase of suppliers and services to keep a company's daily operations going. Also called indirect spending, this type of procurement ensures that your company is running smoothly, covering fixtures, travels, office equipment, suppliers, building utilities, HR functions, technology, marketing, and outsourced services. Indirect procurement does not directly contribute to the company's bottom line, but it's necessary to support the existence of the said company. Spending under this category is a case-to-case basis, which means goods and services are procured based on current needs. On average, indirect spending accounts for 15 to 30% of companies' total revenue. Direct procurement versus indirect procurement. Direct procurement is the process of obtaining goods, services, raw material, and other resources for production. These resources are essential to building a company's product or services that will directly go to its end users or customers. These purchases are typically on a large scale and are conducted frequently. Also called direct spending or indirect cost, this type of procurement includes raw material, products for resale, machineries, and subcontracted labor, to name a few. Direct procurement is closely tied to manufacturing because it covers operation performance, product quality, and consumer experience. Although direct procurement and indirect procurement are both essential to keep a business running, they are widely different from each other, and knowing their differences is important when creating spending strategies. Let us examine their key differences. First, direct procurement purchases. Goods in large quantities that indirect procurement are sourced from a pool of vendors at the best rates. Purchases are also done more frequently in indirect procurement, since the raw materials are being acquired are essential to making their end products or goods for resale, GFRs. On the other hand, purchases under indirect procurement are on an ad hoc basis, which means goods or services are only procured when there is a demand for them. Lastly, and perhaps more importantly, the difference between direct and indirect procurement lies in how they affect the company's bottom line or net income. Direct spend ultimately impacts the bottom line, while indirect procurement does not. The former contributes immediately to the company's revenue, has more transparency, and receives wider visibility. To illustrate, let us look at the manufacturers of smartphones as an example. Their direct spend includes microchips, sensors, batteries, and modems, all of which are essential to build a smartphone that they can sell to their customers. But running a smartphone company is not only limited to the actual production of the smartphone, it also requires spending on renting the factory where the smartphones are produced, as well as marketing-related services to ensure that the products reach their target buyers. Why indirect procurement is important? Having accurate and complete information is key to creating a sound financial plan. You cannot strategize around something that you do not fully see, and failing to take into account these factors could impact your decisions. Having so-called invisible spend could also disrupt your cash flow, as this creates an illusion that you possess more working capital than what you actually have. Procurement leaders must gain full visibility over their indirect spend, as this could pave the way to more cost-saving solutions. A 2014 London-based professional services provider, EY, found that optimizing indirect spend can cut costs by as much as 25%, including an estimated 5% to 25% spending optimization in hardware and software. However, paying attention to indirect procurement is not all about cutting costs. It can also boost your business operations, improve how you deliver your products or services to your clients, and minimize risk exposure. Challenges of indirect procurement. While it does not contribute to the bottom line, indirect procurement impacts the company's overall operations, but many profits-driven companies tend to overlook this area as a result of its complex nature. In a survey, outsourcing analyst firm Nelson Hall found that about 80% of respondents advised that indirect procurement was delivering against expectations, reflecting the roadblocks of this function. Let us examine the challenges of indirect procurement. The first one on the list is lack of visibility. Indirect procurement is often treated as less important as it does not have immediate impact on profits nor end products and services unlike direct spend. This often leads to one-off transactions with no negotiated contracts, making them vulnerable to mismanagement. Indirect spend also usually relies on various business divisions, meaning there are no central mandate overseeing it. This makes it hard to identify which specific department is responsible for the policies. For example, HR is responsible for training, marketing is responsible for advertising, IT for software, and so on. This results in having many internal departments involved in spending on different goods and services across various categories. Second, having multiple suppliers. Another major roadblock to indirect procurement is having to deal with multiple suppliers at once. Since indirect spending covers the overall operations of the company, it often requires volume buying. But since some companies do not have centralized policies for indirect procurement, this sometimes results in maverick spend, also called tail spend or rogue spend, which refers to unchecked expenses that could ruin a business. This type of spend can occur for 80% of spending of a company that does not have a centralized indirect procurement process. Having too many vendors at an already jam-packed table is a problem waiting to happen. It can lead to contract lapses, which in turn results in compliance risks. Unlike its counterparts, indirect procurement does also always rely on preferred suppliers, meaning the procured goods and services do not match the approved vendor's quality and price. Third, lack of skills. Companies need skilled professionals to handle the complete nature of indirect procurement. These skills include data analytics, category and supplier management, and contracting. But many organizations fail to appoint qualified professionals to handle indirect procurement simply because they do not understand the importance of this function. Talent shortage has been haunting the procurement segment for years. According to an annual research of procurement trends by Zygus, a cloud-based procurement solutions provider, nearly 3 to 10 respondents identified lack of skills as the major pain point facing the segment. This was underpinned by the retirement baby boomers, absence of university graduates feeding directly into procurement roles, and increased competition against higher paying jobs. Fourth, underinvestment. Indirect procurement. Indirect procurement is susceptible to underinvestment because it lacks of immediate impact on profits. Zeig's study found that 7 in 10 respondents considered outdated technology as the segment's biggest pain point. It also found that about 30% of companies have yet to spend on procurement technologies. Additionally, younger tech-adept procurement professionals said that their present companies' tools fall short of the user standard that they are used to. For example, having vendor management system VMS and inventory management tools are not usually a priority in direct spending, which decentralizes the handling of expenses that fall under it across different business units. Organizations need to realize the importance of investing in indirect procurement given the cost-saving solutions that they can get out of it. Fifth, risk mitigation. The procurement process is also vulnerable to supply risks. This includes market and delivery risks as well as frauds. This is caused by employing unqualified participants and favoring informal decision policies. Procurement can likewise lead to compliance risks such as policy adherence and anti-corruption. Tips for better indirect procurement. Indirect procurement is a nuanced function that largely depends on the requirements of a company. How do you get started on something so complex? Here are some tips and best practices to get the most out of indirect procurement. The first one is to set priorities. A well-established indirect procurement process can yield cost saving. To start planning, you need to identify which spending areas are likely to bring the best benefits. You should prioritize items that account for the largest portion of your indirect spend, as well as those that have the biggest impact on how you deliver your goods and services to your clients. In technology companies, this can cover contingent workforce. In manufacturing, this often includes maintenance and repair. And in healthcare companies, this usually involves insurance risks, IT, and staffing services. You can leverage various cloud-based data analytics tools to identify these areas. Once you have done so, you can review those items that do not meet industry standards or yield value to your money. Second, focus on fine prints. Indirectly procured goods or services tend to involve contracts that did not go through thorough assessment. They sometimes have unexpected restrictions, which in return push up the cost. Contracts are also often written and prepared by the vendors, meaning their terms and conditions are likely to be favorable to them, not to you. When reviewing your vendor contracts, always keep an eye on automatic price hikes, termination charges, and automatic renewals. If you are not satisfied with your vendor's output, go back to the contract if said vendors is meeting their commitments as per agreement. If not, you can always renegotiate the terms or find another vendor. Keep in mind, however, that while the latter is an option, it is not always the first course of action when you want to find ways to minimize costs from indirect procurement. The next one is renegotiation. Now that you have identified the areas where you can cut costs, it is time to renegotiate with your vendors. Renegotiation is not uncommon in procurement. One area to look at is the payment terms. A vendor would often insist payment made within 30 days, but you can always ask to extend it between 60 and 120 days if you want to. But you can always extend it to 60 or 120 days. You can also request price freeze or stabilization mechanism in the contract that would allow for either yearly or incremental price increase based on industry standard instead of a fixed percentage. Fourth, adopt tools and technologies. Another best practice in procurement, either indirect or indirect, is the adoption of new technologies. These tools will help you gain transparency, improve the category management of your spend, generate insights into market trends, and adopt more efficient relation with your suppliers. You can use various data analytics tools to deal with unclassified and random expenses and keep track of them in an organized manner. Data may also include supplier catalogs, purchasing records, and costs. Lastly, create an indirect procurement team. The responsibility of managing indirect expenses should fall under a specific unit and not spread across various departments. You can start by having cross-functional teams who will represent every unit in an organization. This team of representatives must have a vision of the entire procurement process, define the responsibilities of every department, set expectations and accountabilities to identify all the stakeholders. I will conclude this episode by saying that despite its lack of immediate impact on profits, indirect procurement can affect the company's overall growth. Many businesses tend to reduce indirect procurement to mere record keeping without realizing the potential cost-saving solutions it can bring. If done properly, indirect spend can open ways for a company to reduce its random maverick spending. It can also impact the company's branding and relationship with vendors and third-party suppliers. While direct procurement has an obvious impact on the company's bottom line, business leaders should not take indirect procurement for granted. After all, how can you spend on finished product and services if there is no company that exists in the first place? I hope this episode turned out to be insightful for you. I will see you in the next one, and we will talk about type of staff augmentation. Links to everything will be in the description below. If you like our content, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. It will notify you about new content that we will share with you every week. This will help us to produce great content for our professional audience. Let us know if there's something you would like us to discuss in a future episode. Please click the link in the show notes and you can address your questions directly to me. Thank you for listening. I will see you in the next episode.